And welcome everybody to the Huddle, KGUN9's weekly streaming sports talk show. And welcome to the first episode of 2025. I'm Jason Barr, joined by Pat Paris. Pat, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jason. I'm good. Let's go. 2025. Here we are.
Thrilled to be back. We are coming to you here live on Tuesday, 3 o'clock Mountain Time. So it's right before Arizona basketball plays West Virginia. We're going to start with our Huddle poll question, and that is, who is the most important player for Arizona basketball going forward the rest of this season? 4 choices: Caleb Love, Jaden Bradley, Henry Vasar, and Carter Bryant. Now, Pat, I am going to go, and by the way, you can vote on Twitter or on our website, kgun9.com. Pat, I'm going with Henry Vasar, and the reason why I'm going with Henry Vasar is because they're already down Mo Krivas. They are now a little thin as far as bigs. We've seen some limitations for Toby Awaka, and Henry Vasar is that sophomore, ready to make that big step. And I think he is the most important player for Arizona basketball going forward.
Once again, you could, and I don't disagree with you. I'll throw it out there. You could make the argument for any one of these 4. In fact, full transparency, you had Caleb Love, Jaden Bradley, and Henry Vasar, and I threw in Carter Bryant, and I'll tell you why about that in a moment. But I think all 4 of these guys are key in different ways. Obviously, when the Wildcats are going at their best, Caleb Love is being Caleb Love. But he's not always going to be that way, as we saw the other day in what turned out to be a difficult win at Cincinnati. It didn't look like it was going to be that way for a while. But Caleb Love was pretty much shut down in the second half, so they had to find it from other players. We know Jaden Bradley stepped up in that game. Henry Vasar really stepped up in that game. He was a plus 20 in that game. What that means is when he was on the court, the Wildcats scored 20 more points than the Bearcats did of Cincinnati. But I also thought in that game, Carter Bryant was huge in that game in a lot of ways. And I think Tommy Lloyd said it a couple of times now in his news conferences following the games. And while I agree with you, I think Henry Vasar is the answer there, the answer that I believe most strongly in. I think that there are different levels for each one of these guys. That's my point. And that's why I thought Carter Bryant should at least be in this poll, because I think, as Tommy Lloyd points out, he was a typical freshman a month or 2 ago. But in this last month, we've seen him take strides. And I think he could turn out to be the best player in all this group. But he's got to.
But not for this season, Pat. The question is for this season. You can make a case over going forward over the next few years because his Caleb Love's last year.
I'll say that about Henry Vasar as well. I don't think Henry Vasar is going to play his best basketball till next year. I think he's made great progress. He's showing us what we thought we would see when he was that gangly, teenager that was here 2 years ago before he got injured last year. I just think Carter Bryant could end up being the best player on that team by the end of this season is what I'm saying. I think he could be. I think that's how good Carter Bryant potential-wise is. But I think Henry Vasar is the correct answer in my estimation. But I give it
We usually don't pick the same one on the whole.
No, we usually don't. But you can make arguments for all those. So I'll go Henry Vasar.
I like when Vasar's aggressive. Those dunks and everything. He needs to be a little more aggressive. Obviously, Jaden Bradley's the point guard. He's been the best player this year. Caleb Love, a little bit inconsistent. Carter Bryant, I think maybe going forward, heck, you could throw in Elijah Arenas and Koa Pete, the guys they're recruiting as important guys, if you wanted to really kind of branch it out there. Yeah. Anyway, Pat, ESPN bracketology comes out today, and Arizona's a bubble team. They're the first 4 in. On one hand, they don't have any good wins. I guess you could call the Cincinnati.
No, Cincinnati's a good, Jason. That's a good win.
I know, but
it's a top 25 team in the Big 12.
Cincinnati looked terrible. They're out of the top 25.
Big 12 road wins against teams that are high ranked, either AP or net rankings. They're a quad 1 team. That's a good win. It's a really.
But my point was, they also don't have any bad losses. Normally, there's a couple.
Correct.
Normally, they have a bad loss in December. This team doesn't actually have any really bad losses. No. They just don't really have any good wins, really good wins. Yes, the Cincinnati, Pat, that team couldn't shoot a free throw. That team couldn't shoot a 3-pointer. They did not look good. They did
No,
not.
I agree. But
Back.
what happens in these games that gets underestimated by everybody, and that is you go into a hostile arena like that, and that is a tough place to play. Anybody will tell you, yes, I know you hear it all the time. Tough to win in a conference, and every conference says that. But that's one of those arenas where people get in there and start struggling. Had they not gotten to a 19-point lead in that game, let's just say it only gotten to 11 or 12, and then Cincinnati puts on that run, they lose that game for sure.
Yeah.
It's not an easy place to play. And
give Jaden Bradley credit. He missed the layup against UCLA that would have iced that game, and then he missed 2 free throws that might have iced this game. You're like, oh my goodness, is this guy a choke type of player? But then he came back and had a big shot and hit a couple free throws. So good to see Jaden Bradley.
Morgantown's not an easy place.
They found a way to win.
Morgantown's not an easy place to play tonight for them either, Jason. And to get kind of a little revenge tonight would be
I think they're going to be jacked up for this game.
Yeah, I mean, if you can atone that one overtime loss to West Virginia at the tournament in Atlantis in the Bahamas, then all of a sudden. You'll start believing, if I threw this out there at you, Jason, net ranking, that's what the NCAA tournament selection committee uses. Number 16 is Arizona. On the last time we did this show was December 17th. They were 48th in the net ranking. They're now 17th in Ken Palm, one that a lot of
why are they a bubble team, Pat?
And they were number 31, by the way, back on 12. I don't think they are a bubble team, but they got to keep winning these games. You've got to win all your home games, or at least all. You might trip up once, but then you got to keep getting wins like this, like a Cincinnati, at West Virginia. You're probably not going to win in Ames against Iowa State. You're probably not going to win in Lawrence against Kansas when you go on the road there, but you got to get some quality road wins in the Big 12, and they've already gotten one. They can get another one tonight.
They didn't do the Big 12 any favors with those losses in the pre-conference schedule.
That's right.
Big 12 all excited about having Arizona come in, and sure enough, they drop every game to a big-time non-conference opponent. If they go and then beat up on some of the Big 12 teams, it's not a great thing for these Big 12 teams that Arizona lost all these games.
You can say that, Jason, but Arizona all along, everybody knew they had talent. And I think the easy explanation looking back is they just didn't gel very well. And Tommy Lloyd didn't know what rotation to use. Even for the transfer portal era, it's an unusual situation where he had so many new guys coming in and so many guys now with more expanded roles. And it just took a little bit of time. So it's not as if you have to make excuses for Arizona. I think everybody thought they had the talent, and everybody knows that Tommy Lloyd can coach, and it was just a matter of time before perhaps they turned things around. So that old adage of, throw out the record in the non-conference, it's now the conference. Well, it might work out perfectly fine for Arizona if they continue to play well in the conference.
I like Vasar and Carter Bryant in the starting lineup. I just do.
I do too.
Let Trey Townsend come in and hit some 3-pointers off the bench. I also like Del Orso off the bench too. I know he's starting in front of KJ Lewis. I'd rather have Del Orso and the 3-pointers off the bench and I'd rather have KJ Lewis have made that big freshman to sophomore leap than a guy who still needs a second year coming off the bench, Pat.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think this is that same situation, the Pella Larson situation. Del Orso is a really nice player, but he's not a starter in this this caliber of an offense. And
he's not Pella Larson.
And you know what? The thing about him is he's not very good defensively. He's got some defensive deficiencies, and some teams exploit that. And if you noticed, KJ Lewis doesn't start, but guess who gets the bulk of the minutes at that spot? KJ Lewis ends up getting the bulk of the minutes at that spot.
Yeah, you might as well start them. Jason Barr, Pat Paris, this is the Huddle, season 4. I think it is, Pat.
Wow.
Episode 1. I believe it's season 4. I think
we could be right.
Started in 2022. We're glad to be back talking Arizona basketball. We'll talk a little football in a little bit here. But yeah, no, Pat, this is a team that needs 14 wins at least, I think, in the Big 12 to go 14-6 to get them to at least 20 wins kind of going into the NCAA tournament. These are These are somewhat must wins to get these before they go to the tougher games, like you said. We do have a comment. We'll read your comment if it's good. Lute hated the non-conference. More time for Brian. Listen, that was a different era. It was a different era right now for basketball. These non-conference games are very big. They're mostly in multi-team events now. Listen, Brian had 14 points in 15 minutes. He gets 30 minutes. I mean, if he plays like that, he's doing 28 points. This guy's got more upside potential than a Trey Townsend and some of the other guys on this team.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you excited about Carter Bryant. He's only going to get better with the minutes, but you can't expect him, Pat, to be that consistent as a freshman.
No, you're going to have struggles, but I think he turned the corner. I think they were talking about it on the broadcast the other day too. And sometimes it's about confidence, just getting that confidence back a little bit. Same thing can be said for Caleb Love, for a lot of players, even Henry Vasar. Is just, you see the confidence coming. And I think that with Carter Bryant's the same way. Imagine, if you will, a highly touted 5-star player comes in, and he's not going to start, and he doesn't really know how he fits in, and the coaches don't know how he's going to fit in, and they're trying to coach him up, and so you can see how you could start losing a little of the confidence, the edge that you had when you were just dominating other players at the high school level. And you have to see some of that hard work that you're putting in practice, taking some of those lumps that you do in games. You have to see some of that pay off, and he's starting to see it pay off.
Before we get to the football, we'll talk about Bryce James here, LeBron James' son, joining Arizona basketball. Listen, he's not he's not a 5-star prospect. He's not somebody who's probably is going to get a lot of big minutes his freshman year. If he does, it's like the coaching staff, I believe, said it means he's earned it. It does bring some recognition into the program, but I think big picture, maybe it helps in recruiting and getting some of the guys. I know that when Elijah Arenas, a guy by the name of Koa Pete, was here in a Nike game a couple days ago. So yes, it's a big headline. I don't know how big a deal this is going to be, but maybe it is. Maybe he does become an impact player, and wouldn't that be terrific? Chose Arizona over Ohio State, and I think Duquesne were the other serious teams interested in him.
Well, let's put it this way. Let's say he doesn't, never cracks his starting lineup. Neither of us believe that he'd be a starting guard for Arizona.
Not right away.
But let's say he turns into a Conrad Martinez, somebody who is your second option and gets minutes, because you can't have a guy play all 40 minutes. And when he's in there, he does nice things, and he's solid on both ends. And all of a sudden, you've got a nice little player that you're glad you have on the team. So if that's all you get out of him, that's great. But I agree with you. I think more of the upside probably is just the fact that everybody raised an eyebrow and probably clicked on the stories on ESPN when they saw that Bryce James is coming to Arizona, and that LeBron James is talking about Arizona and Tommy Lloyd. That really helps him more than anything.
Mentioned bear down in the Lakers locker room.
Yep.
All right, let's chat a little bit of football here. NFL draft. A couple things. I want to get to the Antonio Pierce firing, but first we're going to talk Tetairoa McMillan. And here's the NFL draft order. And there's articles about the Patriots possibly taking him at 4, which is so funny because it seems like everybody goes to the Patriots here from U of A, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes. If he does still go number 4, it would be the highest ever. I believe Ricky Hundley at number 7 by the Raiders. He could top that by going to the Raiders here at number 6. Listen, he will not be a bust. He's too talented.
That's right.
If he's not productive, there's something wrong with the offense, and there's something wrong with the quarterback. This will not be an NFL bust. He's too talented, and he's got too good a head on his shoulders for that to happen.
Well, and there's a couple of teams right there. And you mentioned the Patriots, they have a quarterback now, and they just don't have an offensive line. They don't have a defense. Every one of those teams has deficiencies and major problems with their roster makeup. And he instantly makes whatever team he goes to better, Jason. So what teams on that list really need wide receivers? Probably several of those need a wide receiver. It's not all they need, But yeah, I have a good feeling that he's going to land somewhere in that list of the 9 that we're showing, and it might be as early as 4.
Yeah, I mean, with some of these articles, I thought he was going to be kind of maybe a mid first rounder. His stats weren't terrific this year. There was some BS talk about how he was, you know, had some bad temperament on the sidelines or in the field. I'm sorry, that didn't happen. What do you
No,
want the guy to be
never
thrilled?
happened.
The team's losing.
Never happened.
I want someone to be a little bit,
Right.
come on, let's go. For those of us who have been around him, this is a top notch dude. And
That's right.
so that's only going to help. And so I think right now it's whether or not he goes, top 7 or top 6 and becomes the highest ever Wildcat, and whether he goes to the combine and what type of difference that makes as well.
I thought that, and you can always look at stats, but stats don't tell the real story. That's why they send scouts, right? That's why they have guys going there to evaluate him. And I think just as you always talk about, Jason, the eye test just shows you this is a guy that's going to play and play well on Sundays, not just be an NFL player, but really be a standout NFL player.
Yeah.
And I think what he really did this year that he hadn't done the first couple of seasons, and that was he was able to almost always be open. First of all, it didn't mean that the ball always got to him, but he was almost always open. He made almost every catch that he could make. There were some balls that he couldn't catch that I thought he got downgraded on that were not easy catches. But when he caught it, what was so impressive?
Had the bad fumble, missed the one in the sun in the Territorial Cup game. It wasn't a perfect year, Pat.
No. But when you watched him make a catch, what he did afterwards with that is NFL talent that's very, very rare. And that is the ability to, with his size, still have lots of speed and escapability and moves. And then with his size, he's not easy to bring down either. So I think all of those things added together with just the length that he has, the ability to make those catches in the end zone. I think he's surefire. Really standout NFL wide receiver. We'll just see which team he goes to, because that more than anything may determine his fate as far how big a name he becomes in the NFL.
For sure. Now, if he does go to the Raiders, he won't be going to play for Antonio Pierce, who was, as we come on here, was just fired by the Raiders. Antonio Pierce, a former University of Arizona player. And, when I first heard the news, I'm like, oh my goodness, could he come here as the defensive coordinator? And then I forgot for a second, he has that show penalty with ASU, whereas he's hired by a college team. He's got to sit out for an entire year. Yeah. And he would bring a lot of baggage. He's, he's had his share of issues. So I'm not sure, what type of fit he would be anyway. So I don't think he's, somebody who's going to be coming to Arizona as defensive coordinator, even if he might have a lot to offer. But Antonio Pierce let go after one and a partial season by the Raiders, who are going to be paying, I believe, 4 head coaches next year, right? John Gruden, Josh McDaniels, Antonio Pierce, and then the new coach who comes in.
The new coach is.
Not an ideal scenario.
It's interesting that they acted as if Antonio Pierce was going to stay right after the game on Sunday and even into Monday, and now they let him go. And it makes me wonder if they're not trying to get Mike Vrabel. They, as in the Raiders / Tom Brady, try to get Mike Vrabel before the Patriots get Mike Vrabel. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Is
very well could be. No, that's good.
Mike Vrabel's the hot name for the Patriots, but could he be Tom Brady's pick to? And it sounds to me like Tom Brady's done with broadcasting after 1 year and is going to get more involved. That's just some.
Where did you see that?
I heard it on a couple of talk shows, including Dan Patrick, that's kind of the way that people look at it, that they thought he was only going to be a one and done in broadcasting anyway, because when he bought into the Raiders, there was immediate backlash from the NFL saying, well, you can't go into your broadcast meetings with other teams in the NFL. That could be tampering. So
no, there's ways to work around. I think the biggest issue, Pat, is the money, because he's getting paid a ton of money by Fox. It's 30-something million a year. As long as he can replace that money by doing something else, I think he would leave broadcasting in a little bit. He doesn't need it. He's got too many other things going on and too many other bigger fish to fry. But if Fox is paying you $30-something million,
Well, I'm
You
not
know,
going to. I wouldn't turn it down,
that's to me the issue
he
is
may
where is
not
that money
need.
being replaced?
Yeah, he may not need to replace that money as much as he needs to just make sure he continues to have other streams of income. And maybe he wants to try his hand at this ownership thing without actually being the majority owner, and that's where has with the Raiders. And now he can kind of shape a team without even being a coach either. Because I'll tell you, the last thing I'll bet a guy like that wants to do is be a coach. But he would
No,
sure as
no,
heck
he's
try to be like a GM of sorts or a minority owner that
like
can
what
help.
Derek Jeter did
Yeah,
for Tampa, or
yeah.
was it the Marlins?
The Marlins.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like what Derek Jeter did, he's from Tampa. Well, something like that. I could see him doing, and
Yep.
whatever his clothing
Yep.
bunes and some of the side
Right. But
projects going away.
if he could help get a Mike Vrabel to come be the head coach of the Raiders, and then help a bunch of free agents that he knows to maybe find their way to the Las Vegas, then that may be what he decides is more important to him than anything else
But
at this
he
point.
wasn't bad at broadcasting, and I tell
No,
you what, he
no.
he would have been better if he does have a second year. He will be better. Don't forget when it came to quarterbacking, he made himself great. He wasn't the most talented quarterback to begin with. Okay, maybe he's not the most
Yeah,
talented broadcaster to begin with, but I think he would do very well in a second year. He's much better than say Joe Montana was. He's not as
yeah.
good as Troy Aikman, but he could make himself. He could bridge that gap. I think people were a little bit too hard on him and expecting him to be the best broadcaster and the best football guy, and that's understandable because they would put him in that number one spot.
Yeah. No,
You know?
I think you're right. I think if he comes back for a second, he'd be better. I'm just not sure he will, and we'll just have to see it play out. I have no inside information. It's just things that I've
Yeah, I
heard
wouldn't be surprised either. I
talked
feel a
about.
little bit too, but I wouldn't be surprised if he came back as well. All right, let's finish up here with some results of our huddle poll question. We're looking at who is the most important player. So this is getting looks like it's gotten a lot of votes here based on the percentages here.
Mhm.
I'm not surprised because this one makes you think a little bit. Going forward, which Arizona player is most critical to the team's success this season? Hey, listen, Caleb Love is the rating Pac-12 player of the year. And if he puts up 33 points, um, hold on, we've got a little correction here. The fourth one is Jaden Bradley. Is Carter Bryant at 17.9. So
Yeah,
when
the
you look at
last
the
one's
fourth
Carter
one, it's
Bryant.
not two Jaden Bradleys. That's
Yeah.
Carter Bryant is
Yes.
the fourth one at 17.9%. I'm surprised only Jaden Bradley is 7.1% because he is the point guard. He's the guy the ball goes through. I mean, that's a pretty important deal. I'm also surprised at how low Vasar is, considering the injury to Mo Crevis. But it looks like people have Caleb Love, and it looks like some people kind of agreed with you. If Carter Bryant is 17.9%, that's almost 1 in 5, Pat.
Yeah, that's the second highest number, and I understand why people pick Caleb Love. To me, that's the too easy of an answer because as I started out, as we discussed it, I said, as goes Caleb Love, so goes the
Well, they're
Wildcats in
thinking
a lot of
about the 0
ways.
for 9 or whatever it was in the three-pointer in
Yeah,
the tournament
yeah,
game.
yeah,
That's
and
understandable.
so if Caleb Love is Caleb Love, that's why I picked Henry Vasar as being the more important one, and then I put in one. Vasar's one for me, then Carter Bryant's 1A, I guess.
Okay. I would have gone with Henry Vasar 1, and I might have gone with either Bradley or Love 2, just because Carter Bryant's a freshman, and maybe I'm not looking
I
for
did
that
vote.
much for
I
him. But
I
yeah, if
did
he
vote for
steps up
Vasar.
and becomes an impact player every single game when we didn't think he was going to be, that's an addition we didn't think we were going to get. And so I think I said he had 14 points in 15 minutes. I think it was 15 points in 14 minutes, possibly,
It might have been.
or whatever it was.
His
But
shooting he was
yeah,
perfect from
he's not going to go
yeah.
5 for 5 every game. There's
No,
nights on the road where the ball's not falling.
but that's
Um,
pretty good to be on the road and do that, right? In a
yeah, no, for
hostile
sure.
environment. I mean, there's no question.
Yeah, and it's got to do wonders for his confidence.
Yeah.
All right, so like I said, we're coming to you right before the West Virginia game, so we'll have a couple of games to talk about next week. And hey, listen, maybe this team can get on a little bit of roll, and make it so they're not quite the bubble team. But it is interesting how ESPN bracketology has them the bubble, and Ken Palm
Yeah.
has them so much
I
higher. So
I
that's
would
going to work itself out in the
Yeah,
next.
I would say
Several
that's it. Yeah, you can say they're a bubble team right now because they have to continue to prove and continue to get better and continue to rack up the wins because they dug themselves a big hole. But Ken Palm doesn't look at that. The NCAA net ranks don't look at that. They just look at you right now, what your body of work is. And you pointed it out real quick. I know we're going to go, but real quick, you pointed out that They don't have necessarily a bunch of quality wins. They may have just one right now, waiting on tonight's game against West Virginia, but they don't have any bad losses, and that really helps you in the net ranking. It really helps you in Ken Palm.
For sure. All right. For Pat Paris, I'm Jason Barr. This has been the Huddle, KGUN 9 streaming weekly sports talk show. We'll see you right back here, same time next week.